What is the definition of innovation? So for me, an innovation definition is basically the embodiment of new knowledge in some tool, process, technology, something along those lines, right? So the key here, there's a couple of really important things when I say the embodiment of new knowledge within a tool, process, or a new technology, if you don't know. So a couple of the important things is there's accumulation of some sort of knowledge. So everything with a new innovation, or any particular technology per se, is that there is accumulation of knowledge that happens over time. It's slowly building up over time. We're getting better. We're understanding the world a little bit better as we accumulate knowledge in this particular area. The other thing that's important with an innovation is that it is new. There's some sort of knowledge is differing to some degree. There is a uniqueness to some degree from the existing corpus of knowledge. So from what we currently know, and that's where an innovation differs from just basically technology, for example, and that it's slightly different from the existing knowledge, right? From the existing what we already know. And it's the reason why we do these sort of broad definitions is actually really difficult to sort of understand what an innovation is, what technology is. And this is the best thing that we kind of understand is that there's an embodiment of knowledge. So all of that we learn and understand is embodied in some sort of tool, right? It could be, so for example, it could be a stick. If you think about it, if cave people from a long, long time ago were using a particular stick for farming, that would be a technology, that would be an innovation. And the first time that they sort of discovered that and used it for a while, that would be an innovation. They would have came up with something new. That stick would have been something new. So even though it's a stick and we think of it, it's just a stick, well, that's a technology, and it is also an innovation, particularly when it first emerges onto the market and it's something different than somebody else hasn't used before. And what is key with a particular innovation, I think, is, and particularly technological innovations, is that it's used to solve some problem that we have, right? So we're always focused on, it's always really problem solving focused, right? So if it wasn't necessarily all that problem solving focus, it would be just a generation of knowledge, and that's all we're talking about. But here, we always have some sort of problem in the marketplace, and we're always trying to solve that particular problem with a technological innovation that solves that problem, and it allows you to move on with accumulating more knowledge or understanding the world in a different way. So now, are there different types of innovation definitions? Is this the only innovation definition that we have? Well, yeah, there's lots of different types of innovation definitions. Well, first of all, just defining what an innovation is. There's lots of different types of innovations, for example, and I can get into a couple of those. What are these different types of innovation? So, for example, one of them might be related to product innovation, or one of them might actually be product innovation, right? So what is a product innovation? This is where you offer a new product to a customer, some product or service to a new customer that is distinct enough that they believe that it is new. It's novel enough that they believe it's new. It's kind of really it's difficult to sort of define what it is, but it's usually perception from the audience or perception from somebody else that is paying attention to it. That is what a product innovation is. And what a product innovation, some examples of a product innovation, for example, might be the Apple iPhone, right? Or a new table that's introduced, a new computer that's introduced, new plastic bags. These are all things that are offered to the market, right? That's the important thing is being offered to the market. It is the sort of last stage of producing something, if you're thinking of a particular company, for example. Or if you're a company of one, you're just an innovator, then you're providing something to the market, and they have to perceive that it's solving some sort of problem that wasn't solved in the past, or couldn't be solved in the past without this particular technology, right? The other thing is, or another type of innovation, another different type of innovation, is a process innovation, right? So what is a process innovation, and how does that relate to an innovation definition? Well, process innovation is sort of the things to go into all of the new ways and new knowledge and new tools and processes that go into the back end of manufacturing a particular product or service, right? That this is a process innovation might be things like improvements to a manufacturing plant, for example, improvements to a new manufacturing line, might be new quality control ways of thinking about things. So it might be, so for example, there was what's called total quality management a few years ago. It was introduced. Might be new ways of delivering or delivery of a particular product to the market, right? So maybe it is, so for example, Amazon is introducing these drones right now, right? Woo! These drones, those are really important. And that is a process innovation that's getting the product to the customer much more quicker than it would be in the past. And there's all sorts of things that are emerging. Probably, actually, the most amount of innovation is actually occurring in the process side rather than on the product side, because there's just a lot of things. There's lots of moving parts to get something into the marketplace, right? There's lots of different things that are going on. Innovation can also be defined in terms of how different it differs from the existing corpus or existing core technologies that are on the market, right? So you can also define an innovation definition might be how different it is from currently the existing knowledge that's currently right there, right? So this is where you think about incremental innovations, ones that are just slightly different than the existing knowledge that's already out there, right? There's also radical innovations. These are ones that are really different from that's already on the marketplace, and ones that are and then there's also breakthrough innovations. These are things that are really, really different from things that are in the marketplace, right? That are just fundamentally different, that change things fundamentally within the marketplace. So incremental innovation are things that don't require a lot of investment. Usually you can get things out within a year or two. If you're a company, for example, you might be able to, it doesn't require a lot of new knowledge. It's just basically building up of what's already on the marketplace, and you're just kind of making a tweak of some sort or a change of some sort. It's just a small change. It's a small incremental innovation. So examples might be a new model of a car. Sometimes we might think of what are generational product innovations. They might be a new model of a car. It might be a new iPhone. It might be a new computer. It's just a different model of the existing knowledge that's already out there. Radical innovations are really fundamentally different. They take a lot of time. They might take 5, 6, 7 years to get to the market. They take a lot of investment to get to the market before they actually start producing and they develop, actually something useful for somebody. It just takes a long time to develop. It requires substantially new knowledge, not from the producer, right? So the innovator, but also the audience has to sort of perceive that and understand it in a new way. So things might be, so for example, the and sort of maybe a good definition of a radical innovation, one that is sort of so fundamentally a radical innovation that's so fundamentally different would be, a breakthrough innovation, one that is really added to the marketplace is fMRI, the ability to see sort of blood flow in a brain and stuff like that. That is fundamentally changed the medical industry, for example, to be able to see functional magnetic resonance imaging, be able to see somebody's brain as they're thinking about things is fundamentally really cool stuff that we couldn't do before. I think it came out in the late 70s, and it's fundamentally changed how we do research, it changes how we do sort of hospital care, all sorts of things. There's a lot of radical innovation that happens in healthcare, for example. Like that, there's lots of radical innovation that happens in education, for example. It might be the introduction of, this, right? YouTube is definitely a radical innovation from my perspective because it is so fundamentally different than what we have in the past. There also could be, business model innovation. So there's another way of thinking about innovation, another type of innovation that you can think of, another innovation definition that you can sort of think of, or an element of an innovation definition that you can think of. And a business model innovation is providing some new way of managing, new way of producing a product or service, or a new way of managing the process itself, right? So it's fundamentally different, the way of managing things that we didn't have before, right? So the business model is fundamentally different. This could be sort of considered a part of a broader class of organizational innovations, for example, where organizational innovations could be a lot of different things that happen within an organization, all sorts of new knowledge that's being added to the market, to an organization that wasn't there before. So for example, it might be adding some new routines that are played out in the innovation or in the organization, some new management information system that's put out into the organization, all sorts of different things that happen. And, part of that is the business model innovation, where you provide a new business model that serves the market in a fundamentally different way that wasn't done before. So one of them, I think, for me, is for business model innovation that's currently happening right now is the sharing economy. This is fundamentally different than what we've had in the traditional economy, where people are just giving things, right? So like this YouTube video, I'm a professor of innovation, strategy, and entrepreneurship, and I'm just giving of myself so that other people can find this helpful and useful, right? So just being giving and sharing and providing knowledge like this is fundamentally different. It is completely different than what's happening in the vast majority of the traditional economy. I truly believe in what's going on in the sharing economy. I've researched it pretty substantially now, and I do see a substantial benefit with sharing and getting ideas out there like this, right? So this is really cool. For example, the traditional economy might be thinking more about the appropriation of knowledge or appropriation, some rents or some profits that are generated from knowledge. But this, as you give, what you're actually doing is diffusing your ideas a little bit more, and it's growing your ideas, and you're becoming much more of a central player in the marketplace by giving of yourself, and that can grow the marketplace a lot more. Now, what in terms of an innovation definition and all these different types of innovation, so for example, process innovation, product innovation, I was talking about, in terms of the differences from the existing knowledge, in incremental innovation, breakthrough innovation, as well as radical innovation. And then getting into sort of other things like business process innovation. There's what's fundamental to all of these things and to sort of developing an innovation is actually creativity, right? So creativity is an essential element to any particular innovation. Creativity is the act of providing new and useful ideas, however that might be defined. It's generating ideas. There's lots of stuff that goes on to creativity, for example. I teach a course on creativity and innovation. There's lots of different ways to sort of think about generating new ideas and how they emerge and stuff like that. But in general, what is important here when you think about something that is unique and different that's already on the market than what's already on the market, you have to come up with a new idea of what's already on the market. So you have to come up with some sort of creative idea that is going to add value to the existing business environment that you already have, right? So creativity can be applied to all these different innovations, product innovation, process innovation, all that kind of stuff, organizational innovation. And it fundamentally improves, and the idea, and I personally believe, is solving some sort of problem. And that creativity should be geared towards solving some sort of problem that you currently have. And if you can think of, all those problems that we have, and there's so many, it's infinite, right? We have infinite number of problems to solve because there's so much complexity in the world. And because of that, then creativity is going to become more important, as well as innovation is going to become more important in the economy as we move forward.